to this week's part in the series on the 8 realms of employee wellness. This week we're doing meaning, productivity, and impact. This is week 3, and really excited to go over this one with you all. So let's get into it. Great. So here's what we'll do in the next half an hour. We'll do a regulation activity. We'll talk about employee wellness. We'll talk about meaning, productivity, and impact specifically, our assessment tool, and we'll give some tips for every budget. And then we'll talk about how we can help at 10 Collective. So today's regulation station, we won't really do this together. Typically there's an activity here. Although if you want to, this is, one thing where it's like, instead of like, put your phone away so you can pay attention, grab your phone. If you're feeling dysregulated, for me personally, and I actually hear this from a lot of people that I know personally or work with or train, that doing breathing techniques when we feel dysregulated oftentimes doesn't help and can make us feel really angry that we're not doing it right or it's not working fast enough. And that's something I hear over and over. And a way more fun way to regulate ourselves when we're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, we can't think clearly. Maybe we've had a really tough day at work. If we work directly with people in need, we may have heard an upsetting case. And it can be, this is, one of my top tips. Just watch something really funny. So it could be your favorite comedian, it could be a video on TikTok, it could be something on Instagram. I think it could be nice to sort of know who some comedians are. That way you could, instead of getting like sucked into a social media trap, you could just go and search them in YouTube and just watch a 3 or 5 minute clip of some stand-up that they've done. Or, this has gotten me through some tough jobs before. Definitely having like a coworker that I exchange memes with, that really works for me. And in the past, we'll just have sent each other, in our team Slack, a whole bunch of funny memes, and that tends to take the weight off. So viewing something funny is a great way to regulate that we often forget about. So we start these looking each week at the fact that in the United States, and of course, many of you may be joining from outside of the United States, but a lot of the issues are relatable. The Surgeon General has prioritized employee health because it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad out there. Employees are noting that they have symptoms of mental health conditions, and that their employment is a cause of mental distress. And that makes us at 10 Collective really sad. And so a huge part of our mission of 10 Collective is to use the same trauma-informed care principles that we would use with the populations that we serve, families and children mostly. Use those internally with employees. Take really, really good care of employees so that we have nice, caring work environments where employees thrive instead of feeling like work is making us crazy. And I think we've all had at least one job. Sometimes people that I meet, it's been all their jobs that make us go crazy. But we would like to promote, and we know it's possible to have workplaces that help people feel cared for and that help people thrive. I have worked at many places like this, and it's my mission to create more thriving workplaces. So you can download our free PDF, and the entire 10 Collective team worked to create this assessment, and it was designed by our graphic designer, Mindy Atwood. And it's a beautiful document, and you can just go to our homepage, 10-Collective, and download the PDF. And please feel free to use it as much as you want for whatever reasons that you want. So if you want to use it internally to do a big assessment for your team, please do. And also, if you want to hire a neutral third party to do the assessment with your team, please feel free to reach out, because that is something that we can help with. I just want to make sure really quick that my slides are showing. And I realize that they're not. uh, I'm glad I decided to check. When I have the slides up, I can't see what I'm sharing. Okay, amazing. Um, so, okay, awesome. So let me just go through those really quick. Here's the slides that you missed. Nothing too important. Okay. This is our employee wellness self-assessment wheel. And so you can see we're on the little green wedge for meaning, productivity, and impact. So just to recap what we've gone over already so far, in week 1, we talked about psychological safety. I encourage you to watch that whole video. It's on YouTube. It's also on LinkedIn. And this includes when employees feel included, safe to learn, safe to contribute, and safe to challenge the status quo. Then they end up being more innovative, more engaged, and companies end up retaining employees for longer periods of time. For round 2, we talked about structure, role definition, and authority. So when we know what we're responsible for, which tasks to do and when, and are given the authority to make decisions, then we're safe to be more creative, feel more focused, remember details, and be more socially engaged and collaborative. And we went over some very, very, very basic brain science. This stuff tends to be pretty complicated, actually. But when we can help the survival part of the brain, the emotional part of the brain feel safe, then we have more access to what this diagram is calling the smart brain. So our executive functioning, our memory, our ability to set and make goals. So we have to feel safe, and structure and definition within our job help us feel safe so that we can access the more creative parts of the brain. So this is the part of our assessment. Each realm has 5 questions. So, and I just want to double check one more time that this is the screen. Okay, cool. So, yeah, meaning, productivity, and impact. So these are the 5 questions that you can answer right now. So the first question, and this is a scale from 1 to 5. So 1 being, I don't feel this very much, 5 being like, yeah, we do this really well. So the amount of work that is expected of me is reasonable. I feel satisfied with the amount of work I complete each day. I am able to meet my deadlines without feeling overwhelmed. I feel my work directly moves our organization's mission forward, and I feel I am making a positive impact with my work. So take a minute to kind of score this for how you feel about your current job. I'm also scoring this in my head, and I'm like, oh, I think I have, I think I need to make some changes for myself. So it's an ongoing process. So this is very intuitive, and I could pull up a million studies. I don't have time to do that today, but you can Google this. What is the brain science of human beings wanting to feel productive? You will find infinite studies, right? So feeling productive, feeling like we're getting things done, this is what makes all of the feel-good chemicals in our brain just go off. So for example, you may have noticed when you make a list of things you want to do and you check them off, feels really good. Well, your brain is really releasing dopamine every time you check one of those items off. So making a list and checking the items off is a great way to feel good. But in macro, ways too, not just a daily task list. And we want to feel like our work makes a difference. Nobody wants to go to work and feel like we're useless and not doing anything. And we want to feel like we're connected to a mission and that we're helping people. We're actually wired to be social. I always say that there was never a time on earth when there was only one person. So we, since the inception of our species, we're always um, connected to others and relating to others. And so when it comes to showing up to work, we have this innate sense that we want to make sure that what we're doing is helping other people. So, based on conversations that we've had with clients, potential clients, and then our professional experiences, here's some things that we have heard. Our caseload requirements are impossible to meet. I'm going to have to quit because I'm so burned out. We hear that a lot from social workers. And kind of, raise your hand if, uh, or comment if this is something that you've heard or experienced. We've had to let some employees go because they weren't taking initiative on getting work done. We're going to address all of these points. It doesn't seem like our work is making an impact. It seems like we're doing random projects. We hear that a lot. And then, from business owners or managers, they don't need to know why. They just need to do their job. We hear that a lot. Have you heard that? So here's what we recommend based on a lot of the things that we've had the experience with. Um, Creating a strategic action plan. So let me just make sure we're on time. So last year, I worked with a team for the state of Massachusetts, and we worked with these community coalitions in the state of Massachusetts who wanted to implement trauma-informed care programs in their communities. And they were given actually $20,000 in grant money to do this. And then we mentored these teams to move forward on these projects. It was so rewarding. We worked with 6 teams throughout the state. It was wonderful. We loved the projects they did. But we insisted that they make a strategic action plan. Not all of them were happy about it. We had a lot of grumbling at the beginning, but by the end, what we were hearing from folks was, we are still using that plan. It was so valuable. We are still putting that plan into action even after the program was over and referring it. And it also builds cohesion among our coalition. And I have worked for many, many, many organizations that skip this step, which is kind of wild. But I'll get to barriers, to implementing these types of things in another slide. But this is really, really, really important. You have to have a strategic action plan, or there's different names for this type of document that starts with the mission of your organization and then creates really tangible and achievable goals based on that mission. So it's a pretty important to involve staff members. If you don't want to involve everybody, at least involve senior leaders and management, who then maybe get feedback from the people that are working more on the ground. That way, everyone feels like they're co-creating this together, and they feels more meaningful to them. It's really important for the sake of transparency and to motivate folks to share it with all employees. So this really goes back to, it seems like we're just doing random projects, which I hear from so many nonprofits especially, is that people need to feel like what they're doing aligns with the strategies that you've created. Otherwise, it's going to be like, why are we doing this? That's very demotivating. You're going to tank your morale. And then managers need to make sure that employee tasks relate back to the plan, which relates back to the mission. So managers need to be checking in every week with each employee and being like, hey, did you get these tasks done that are in the plan that support the mission? So everything needs to relate back to, we know what our mission is, and our plan supports the mission, and my tasks that I'm doing every day are move our mission forward, so that employees feel grounded in, we know what we're doing. This makes sense, and we agreed to it. So SMART goals are such a key component of the strategic action plan. So this is, I'm like forgetting what the S is. Specific. Okay. So SMART is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So this is where you would say um, that we have a goal to serve x number of families, and have this many calls or appointments per week. And so it needs to be specific. We're going to have 10 of them or 20 of them. And then you need to know also, in terms of measurable, you're going to measure, did it get done? But then you also need to measure, did it achieve what it was supposed to achieve? So like, the outcome of this meeting or this task needs to be something that we can measure, and it needs to be achievable, meaning it needs to be reasonable. Um, and so that's relevant. Then, does it relate back to your strategic action plan, and does it have a specific time attached to it? So every week we do X, Y, and Z. So then you're going to want to check in regularly. So as an example, I used to run a nonprofit over 10 years ago. And in my hometown of San Luis Obispo, California. And this nonprofit was called Humankind Fair Trade. And it was a nonprofit retail store selling fair trade items. And we were so diligent. And this was a little easier because we were selling items that were handmade by people around the world to support them. But it's nice to kind of think about how we can do this in a non-sales, non-business type setting. But we would look at how much in sales we had done the previous year, and we had a binder, and we would set a goal, and we really just picked an arbitrary goal. I think we said we wanted to double the sales, or maybe it was like we wanted increase by 50%. And so we would write the goal. So we would write last year's in a column, and then we would write our goal number in the column. And so when employees came into work, they would look at what we did last year, they would look at the goal, and it was a tangible number. And this was our goal for today, so time bound. And it was something we could measure. And then it gave employees something to strive for. So when a customer came into the store, we knew what the goal was. And so our actions supported that goal. And it really worked. And studies show that even just setting arbitrary goals really work. And, like I think about this a lot with the Olympics happening right now. Like I saw something where they were comparing the fastest time in a certain run from like 40 years ago, and that's like now become the slowest time, the last place time now in today's Olympics. And so we are really, really good as a species of setting new higher goals that maybe are kind of arbitrary, like, wow, can someone even run that fast? And then doing it. So it's really, really important to have these really tangible goals and to check in regularly. So other successful jobs that I've had is where we have these regular check-ins. Daily would be the binder. Did we meet the goal, the sales goal? Weekly would be like, hey, did we meet all our goals this week? Let's just check in and make sure. Maybe that's more of an email. And then monthly, it's nice to come together where all the teams present. Here's what we did. Here's how that supported our plan. Here's what we did well. Here's what we want to work on. Here's the goals we met. Here's what we didn't meet. And having that be really consistent every month to help people feel tied to the purpose. So this one's so obvious, but make sure caseloads are reasonable. So if you're in management, you're going to want to really advocate for your people and believe your staff when they say that they're overwhelmed, and check in with them regularly, because if they feel overwhelmed, you actually are going to lose money in the long run when they leave. So you're going to want to think about hiring the right amount of caseworkers, because it is actually going to save you money in the long run. And I think also when we get down to a strategic plan, and what I'll get to in terms of evaluation services, when we're evaluating what works, then we tend to cut out everything that doesn't work. And then we kind of realize like, oh, maybe we don't need everyone to be running around like a chicken with their head cut off and doing like a million things. Maybe we actually can cut down on the work that people are doing because it's really only these three things that work. So this ties in with what I'll get to, and we recommend really evaluating your programs. So this, unfortunately, I won't be able to, I just don't have time since these are so short, but it would be nice to talk about some of these, making sure that your workplace is inclusive of every different type of brain out there. And so this one really relates to what I've heard from business owners saying, well, they just weren't self-starters. They just didn't take initiative. Is that you may want to look at and get a trauma-informed care training that looks at executive functioning and the conditions that set up different types of employees to have really strong executive functioning at work. And there can be all sorts of things that cause poor executive functioning that are totally workable and doable. And some of them may relate to mental health. So there may be small triggers coming up that are triggering shame and the freeze response and causing employees to shut down. So when you get a trauma-informed care training that empowers the managers and the employees, so the managers understand, well, why isn't my employee taking initiative? And the employee understands, wow, my brain is really going into freeze mode because this is triggering something bigger for me, or maybe I have PTSD from my previous job. Then you can work together so that everyone's thriving, because none of this is a death sentence. If you have PTSD from a past job, it's absolutely something that you can feel empowered to overcome and work on. So I do highly recommend getting a trauma-informed care training that includes mental diversity and inclusion training, which is something that we offer and we would love to help you with. So we can help you understand autism spectrum disorders, sensory processing disorders and limitations. Some people may be feeling really overstimulated by lighting and noise in their office environment and may just need a little pivot to help them thrive. So there's unique learning and communication styles. And there's sociocultural differences and traumas that impact the brain. And we did Danielle Prince did a great webinar on that. That's on our YouTube channel. And this should be number 4, but evaluate your programs. So Bree and I run, we every Thursday here on LinkedIn, we do a live news segment, and we just say this I think we say it every week, evaluate your programs. We see so many nonprofits and agencies skip this step, and nothing will tank your morale faster than employees feeling like they do not understand the impact of your work. So you have to evaluate your programs. If you don't know how to do this, there are experts out there. So this is something that I've been trained to do and can absolutely do. This is something that Danielle Prince, one of our advisors, is an absolute expert in. This is something where people will spend their whole careers learning how to evaluate a program. So if you're like, oh, we don't do that, we should bring in an expert, and they can even help you set up a process that you can keep going. But you need to know if your programs work. So if you have a $4 million budget and you spend $1 million on a program and you never check to see if it's actually doing good or just neutral or causing harm, that is bad for employee morale, and it's bad for the people you serve, and it's bad for whoever's funding your program. And so you're going to want to create that report. Here's what we measured. Here are our goals. Here's the goals we met. Here's where we think we can do better. And you need to share those results with everybody. This is a huge part of morale that we see skipped, and you absolutely cannot skip it. If it's once a year, that's perfect. Evaluate your programs once a year, create a report, and go over this report and celebrate your wins with your employees, because they will feel so discouraged. It could be that you're doing amazing work and changing lives, but your employees don't know about it. So they feel discouraged. And when they're out having drinks with their other coworkers or their friends, they're just saying, I just don't think we're making a difference. I think I have to quit. But you may be doing so much. But you have to communicate that with your employees. So if your program doesn't create change, it's really important to scrap it and start over with something else and communicate with your funder. And we understand that there may be a shame response that comes up in relation to, oh my gosh, we really believed in this. We really thought this was going to make a difference, and it didn't. And so we understand and have so much compassion for that, but it's just so important to do stuff that works. This as a coach working with people one-on-one, my number one coaching question is, but does that work? So we have all these habits and all these behaviors that we're doing. Sometimes like on repeat, we don't even notice that we're doing it. And I just like to say, well, is it working? Is that working? Are you getting the results that you want? And we just forget to ask this so much. So really quick, and we'll go a few minutes past the half hour because I started a few minutes late. But so the Maryville Department of Children and Families. So, Jared shared with us that at Maryville DCF, he and his colleagues are on the verge of quitting nearly every day. There's always too much to do and it never feels done. He said the worst part is feeling like the programs don't make a difference to the people they serve. And Maryville DCF doesn't let employees know the results of their programs. They don't share the wins. There's no strategic action plan. Employees quit regularly because of low morale. They just don't feel the point of working hard to the point of exhaustion if they don't even know why they're there. So Maryville DCF ends up losing a lot of money each year on the hiring and training process. Now, think if you know an organization like this, or if you've ever worked for one, and think about how it feels. So Greentown Youth Services, so Eliza works at Greentown Youth Services, and she shared that she has high job satisfaction. Every year, the whole team gets together to co-create the strategic action plan. They review the evaluation reports from all the programs from the previous year to determine what their goals should be in the coming year. And every week they have mini goals that they know align with their strategic action plan and mission. And their manager checks in to make sure that they're doing these and that they still feel reasonable. So employees get recognition when the goals are met, and managers and supervisors check in regularly. And Greenville Youth Services saves money in the long run with their employee retention, so they can invest in new programs that serve people or pay their employees more, which then leads to even more employee retention. This is just a win-win-win-win. So barriers to implementing some of the stuff I've been talking about. So childhood trauma, for those of you who work in this field with us, this can really come up. That shame can just really put us in fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and put us on this hamster wheel where we're just not putting together the scaffolding that we need and the structure to help us thrive. So we may have had a chaotic home life. And a lot of us who go into these fields where we're serving people and human and health services, we did have home environments like that. That's why we're passionate about helping so many other people. But we do have to tend to ourselves and our own needs first and learn how to regulate ourselves so that we can help others. So we may need to improve our communication skills or even just our executive functioning skills. So we may not have worked somewhere else with great processes, so it's hard to know what we're missing. We have gotten into a pattern of a false sense of urgency, and now it's become kind of addictive where there's always chaos and it's making us feel kind of high. And maybe we don't want to admit when we're running a program that's not working because we feel ashamed. What else am I missing? If you're watching live, go ahead and put in the comments, what are some other barriers to implementing some of the things that I've talked about today? So there is a high cost of doing nothing. Every time a caseworker leaves an agency, the loss costs the agency 30 to 200% of the former employee's annual salary. So high turnover in the child welfare system negatively impacts not only the agency, but more importantly, children and families. One study cited found that youth workers were more reluctant to trust others as a result of losing a caseworker, which can negate years of work to build trust. So that's heartbreaking. So we want to invest in our employees so that everyone benefits. Worker stress is also the 5th leading cause of death in the United States, which is also heartbreaking. Paying your employees more is still probably the number one thing you could do to reduce stress. So 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, but we know from talking and working with all of you that this is just not an option for everybody. So, given the fact that everyone does have a limited budget, of what they're able to work with, providing meaning, encouraging productivity, and through inclusivity. Um, and communicating impact will go a long way. So think of a time that you had a workplace that was a lot more like what Eliza had. Think about that for a second. And how did this make you feel? And what was the difference it made for you? And hopefully you can ponder this a little bit this week, but if you want to, share it in the comments. So having the right leader can really make a difference, and you can be the one who asks for change at your workplace. If you need help with that, send me an email. Okay, it's allison@10-collective.com. If you need help figuring out how to be the one who advocates for change at work, I will help you with that. I will give you the script to use. So resources really quickly, you can use our tool to have an internal employee audit. So you can see, like, do we have a strategic action plan? Do we have SMART goals? Are there regular meetings to check in? Do people know what their daily or weekly or monthly goals are? Are these being communicated? Are we evaluating programs? So, you can start with this and it won't cost you anything. Just see, what are we doing? So that one's from last week. Medium cost would be training series. So with managers and supervisors. So all of these skills are learnable. So none of the stuff that we've talked about is impossible. It's all stuff we can put into practice, especially figuring out some of the barriers and some of those mental blocks as to why it seems like we just can't do it. Of course, one-on-one coaching, it costs more, but you'll see the biggest change. So stuff that we help with at 10 Collective, we can do an organizational assessment. So we can actually assess where you're at currently and what needs to be implemented. We do coaching, we do training series, we do leadership development, and we do training series in trauma-informed care, psychological safety, communication, conflict resolution, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and more. And so working with a coach is amazing because habit change is uncomfortable and takes time and deliberate practice. So changing those neural pathways that have already wired together and are firing together every time, it's really nice to have support because it's hard to change those. So here's a list. We do some really actually more traditional services as well. Evaluation I talked about, but we can help you put together a program, a literature review that you can use to create a program, grant writing, community engagement, community management. We can create educational content. We can do facilitation of support groups. So there's a lot that we can do. We know that being able to rest within a bubble of care in our workplaces gives us so much strength and resilience. Think about a time when you felt really supported at work. It really made a difference in your whole life, right? So please reach out. And let's see, turn that off. Thanks so much for tuning in today. And I will